Good morning, I'm Ernst van Zyl. In the previous episode, we discussed why the ANC-led South African government qualifies for the title of the most race-mad on earth, with over 145 racist laws. In this episode, we will unpack how private property rights are under serious threat in South Africa by a political party in charge that does not see Zimbabwean dictator Robert Mugabe's land grabs as wrong and destructive, but as a fundamentally good idea with some minor flaws in its implementation that just need to be ironed out. Every single claim that will be made in this video is backed up by sources, which can be found in AfriForum's latest The World Must Know report, which can be downloaded by following the link in the description or visiting www.theworldmustknow.co.za. In December 2024, only announced in 2025, President Ramaphosa signed into law the Expropriation Act of 2024, which enables the government to expropriate private property without compensation. To understand the real threat to private property rights that this act holds, some context is necessary. In 2018, President Ramaphosa announced that the ANC had officially resolved to amend the constitution to explicitly allow for land expropriation without compensation. In 2021, this amendment to Section 25 of the Constitution failed to pass in the National Assembly. The ANC failed to obtain the required two-thirds majority support in Parliament, mainly because the Economic Freedom Fighters, or EFF, a far-left extremist party, demanded that full state custodianship of property needed to be put in place, while the ANC only proposed that state custodianship apply to certain land within the context of expropriation without compensation. AfriForum warned at the time that the fight to defend private property rights in South Africa is not over by a long shot, and that these rights will likely be threatened again in the future. In December 2021, after the attempt to amend the Constitution failed, the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, stated, in his words, and I quote, "Changing the Constitution was just one instrument we could have used. The matter is now ended. We will now use our simple majority to pass laws that will allow for expropriation without compensation." End quote. Lamola was referring to, among other things, the then Expropriation Bill, now the Expropriation Act. President Ramaphosa echoed these sentiments when he stated in January 2022 in an address that, and I quote, "The ANC will implement its resolution on the expropriation of land without compensation despite the refusal of other parties in Parliament." End quote. The Expropriation Bill, which President Ramaphosa signed into law in 2025, was published and gazetted in October 2020. The bill, now an act, enables expropriation at nil compensation, which is simply another way of saying no compensation. The act also empowers any state organ or department to expropriate any private property. This power to expropriate is not limited to land. In 2025, many legal experts and analysts tried to gaslight the public by arguing that nil compensation does not mean no compensation. The ANC, however, have been crystal clear about what they understand nil compensation to mean. In 2024, Deputy President Paul Mashatile reaffirmed the government's commitment to expropriation of land without compensation, specifically through the use of the Expropriation Act. On this matter of without compensation and nil compensation regarding the Expropriation Act, the Deputy President said that the intention was the same and the difference was wording. In his words, "It may well be that you have issues with the wording thereof, but the intention is to achieve exactly that we need to expropriate land without compensation where applicable." End quote. Mashatile continued, and I quote, "We use the words in the Act that we should expropriate land if it is in the public interest. The issue of no compensation I will look at, but my sense is that no compensation means that you don't pay." End quote. In an address by President Ramaphosa to the ANC Manifesto Review Rally in 2023, the matter of the Expropriation Bill that enables expropriation without compensation was again emphasized. And in his words, and I quote, "We will pass the Expropriation Bill, and it will grant the state the authority to expropriate land for public purposes or interests and establish that nil or 0 rand compensation will be deemed just and equitable in accordance with the law." End quote. The ANC has therefore not only made their desire and intentions to expropriate private property without compensation clear through their failed attempt to amend Section 25 of the Constitution, but also through their own rhetoric. The same ANC cadres who to this day praise Robert Mugabe as a hero are now trying to convince the public that they would never violate private property rights. In August 2025, President Cyril Ramaphosa once again praised the Zimbabwean Mugabe dictatorship's, in his words, ambitious land reform policies, end quote, and said that he, in his words, believes South Africa and the entire region should take a leaf from Zimbabwe's agricultural model, end quote. The Mugabe regime's land reform policies of the early 2000s being referred to here involved chaotic and often violent land seizures. Private property rights were severely violated when these policies resulted in thousands of white farmers being chased off their land, attacked, and some even being murdered. Mugabe's fast-track land reform program resulted in the collapse of the Zimbabwean agricultural sector and economy and mass human rights violations. This is the policy that the President of South Africa is praising and holding up as a model to be emulated and copied. In August 2025, Jimmy Manye of the MK Party, the third largest party in South Africa, submitted a private member's bill for public comment proposing to abolish private land ownership in South Africa. The bill seeks to amend Section 25 of the Constitution to designate the state as the sole custodian of all land and natural resources, effectively transferring all land ownership from individuals to the government. The draft legislation also proposes extending the land restitution cutoff date to 6 April 1652, the day in which Jan van Riebeeck set foot on land in the Cape to establish a halfway stop between Europe and the East. There is a strong argument to be made that this framing targets Afrikaners specifically as a distinct cultural community, as they attach particular weight to this date in their historical and cultural identity. In October 2025, it was reported that President Ramaphosa conceded under oath that Sections 9, 2, 3, and 4 of the new Expropriation Act are unconstitutional because they, in his words, in error, had provided that expropriation can take place before the landowner can challenge the matter in court. According to President Ramaphosa, these sections may, in his words, render the provisions void for vagueness, end quote, and contradict other sections of the Act. The source of this admission is Ramaphosa's answering affidavit in the court case about the Expropriation Act. This court case by AfriForum and others challenging the Expropriation Act will commence in 2026. Well, there you have it. Our private property rights are under serious threat in South Africa. Do you believe the ANC when they say they value and respect the right of private property? Let us know in the comments. All the information covered in this video and more can be found in AfriForum's The World Must Know report, which can be found in the description of this video or at the website www.theworldmustknow.co.za. You can help AfriForum get the truth out about South Africa by downloading and sharing our report, as well as sharing this video. You can also help strengthen our efforts by becoming a member, link in the description. In the next episode, we will be unpacking how the human rights situation has deteriorated in South Africa in 2025. As always, don't just believe what we say, research what we say.